Brandon, I have a question for you. Besides that horrendous landscape in Abilene that you mentioned, which I found very shocking, and the solar one to come, I have noticed over the last 2 years, no matter where I've gone in the world, the amount of antennas that have gone up for 5G. Mm-hmm. Certainly, I came from a telecom background many years ago, and there's a big power difference in 5G, huge in consumption. And all they ever talk about is that the 5G usage will be lower impact, but to have all those towers and satellite, that must have some sort of impact, huge impact, I would think, on the network.
Absolutely, and you're very well aware of all the communication issues in the Permian and other basins and all the cool little companies that made a killing solving that. There's still a lot of satellite communications out there. When we do demand response on pumps in the Permian, it's a sat phone on top of a pump that throws a breaker. We don't want to be connected to an operator's network from a cybersecurity standpoint. But you provided something that was thought-provoking that some people don't realize. Some of the wind, the eyesore that we see on that side, especially in California, is starting to decommission. It's in its 20th year. It's fiberglass, and when you build a gas plant in the pro forma to get someone to lend you money, you have a decommissioning expense. That was not in the wind profile when the boom happened and all the subsidies. So where are we going to put all this fiberglass? There are companies out there, I just read something, some California-based company that's going to take the wind blade fiberglass and turn it into gummy bears that are edible. How that works, I don't know.
Don't need that.
But the best solution right now is to dig a hole and bury fiberglass. So it's not only that, it's the solar panels. So the circularity, I'm very passionate, and so are my kids, about that. I think Europe moved way too fast. We are falling over our skis a little bit on some of these items, but it's going to be really interesting on who solves that. The government's going to have to throw money at it. We're going to pay more taxes. It's the same old cycle. I'm surprised to hear that how we lean on 5G is lowering over time, given that the average age of a kid having a cell phone or smartphone is going down every year. And it's a parenting problem, by the way. Quit giving your kid an iPad when you go out to eat when they're 6 years old, and actually talk to them. But it's another conference. But I don't see why usage would go down in this connected world. I hope it does.
But doesn't it suck that 5G's got to drain your network?
Yes, but most of ours are private networks. So it shouldn't drain that. We're not leaning on Verizon in the area. It's really, I don't have that direct intelligence because we're an energy as a service provider to the operator. So it would really be more a question for an operator in the Permian, or Heath, for example, Phillips 66, on how are they looking at that and solving it. And I wouldn't be surprised that they've already built in quite a bit of their own private redundancy so that they can.
So there's a company called Infrastructure Networks, which is owned by a client of ours called Altera, which is a private equity firm based, venture capital firm in Denver. Infrastructure Networks, their primary business model is to build privately owned spectrum in oil field and shale plays. They can't build that fast enough.
Yeah.
But it's still going to pull from the grid somewhere.
So I will now have to, we are already a bit late, so sorry, but one more call for questions.
Just a two-part question. I think it's for Casey here. The first tranche of carbon capture is more towards carbon storage and sequestration. So how do large companies like Chevron and all build confidence in acceptance for the storage piece, right? Given the different plays that are happening in the... Do we have enough storage across the globe to be able to be confidently express that. And the second part question is on the utilization piece, right? How do you see the utilization playing out into the future, like capture versus storage versus utilization?
So the first one, I think you need to talk to my subsurface friends, in which I'm not really that familiar with the absolute as far as the years estimated. Another consulting firm, other than this one, had given us some estimates around.
Must be wrong.
In various areas, overall, there's 100 years of storage. And there's just so many variables in that I think we have to be looking for other solutions, which is where the utilization comes in, as well as mitigation, right? It's not like we want to continue to emit at the same levels that we are today. The entire day of panelists talked to that. And so I think you've got to take it, same as you said with efficiency in electricity, how do we become more efficient first? And then how do we start to manage the capture profiles for the future? So I think you're going to see a front-end curve where there's more storage, but then as technology matures and you see maybe it's a little bit of the government getting involved, maybe it's a little bit of the economics getting it to a tipping point, probably both, you should be able to see a balance between utilization, and storage. So that's where my mind is. I think just to dabble into a little bit of the IRA and the ping pong between Europe and I should say pickleball, I guess that's more cool right now. The pickleball between Europe and the US, don't underestimate Canada. Canada has excellent speed to well. Quest has been there for a long time. They've just released a whole lot of land. There is no surface rights. It's all crown land. So it's pretty quick to be able to drill what is the equivalent of a Class 6 well in Canada, which is economic. The challenge is that they've also got on the backside parity at 2027 for what the IRA offers today. So there's just a different degree of decisions that need to be made. It's a global issue. I think you're going to see a couple of different countries lead in creating the right foundation for those utilization technologies to come along. But again, I think it's going to be one of these transitions. I know I shouldn't use the word transition, but transitions over time.
So I just want to follow up on that. So what you're saying is that, I guess, what do you mean by parity in 2027?
So the carbon prices and taxes, if you make sure they're there through contracts of differences, which is the backstop policy that they're thinking about in Canada,
okay.
The value for a ton of carbon
doesn't quite realize
achieves,
until 2027, while IRA
right.
lets you do that right away.
Right, and in North America, Canada used to be the darling of carbon capture because they
Right.
had all the technology front side of it, then the IRA came along. And there's a
Upended
lot of, for multinationals or at least North American companies, there's a lot of decisions being made on, do I go in Canada or do I
Yeah.
move in the US first? And you may be seeing this too, but I think you're going to start to see that come along with Europe coming into play, the UK coming into play. And in some way it's good. If we wanted to solve it quickly, I'll repeat what he said earlier, which is we need a price. And we stop picking favorites.